Jono, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, WisdomTree is one of the few asset managers that didn't just talk the talk, but you really walk the walk, right? You have tokenized funds, you launched WisdomTree Connect, and recently you even expanded to a chain like Solana with all of your tokenized funds. So when you look at the industry today, do you feel like tokenization is still at the experimental stage, or are we starting to hit more of a mainstream and a full rewrite of financial markets?
It's still early days, but it's not an experiment. Now, we have conviction, so we believe eventually everything will go on chain. And you're seeing it go beyond just the crypto native community to firms, TradFi firms like us, more than just asset management, banks and everyone. But you can really see the energy building, and what drove ETFs was better functionality, and it is possible to have better functionality on chain. And so we're sure that it'll continue to grow.
Well, I love that analogy. We're personally a very big fan of the analogy that ETFs is a better, form function almost, and being the same for tokenization. But many of your peers are still kind of catching up to that view and that vision, right? You are pretty advanced relative to some of your peers. Looking back at your own journey, what kind of lessons would you have for other fellow asset managers that are just getting started?
Well, one, I don't want to give them any advice. I couldn't care less what they did. But the how we got here, I think, is interesting. We were asking ourselves the question internally, maybe 8 years ago now, what could do to ETFs, what ETFs did to mutual funds, and we eventually came to the conclusion that potentially it could be tokenization on the blockchain. Now, our perspective, when you think about ETFs, they are the least friction on the old rails. So when we approached it, you needed to have the opinion to make it better than the ETF. How do you make it better than what's best in the world today? And it wasn't so obvious. So one thing that WisdomTree did, we went big every step of the way. So we couldn't at first figure out how to make it better than the ETF. So we did something very much out of characteristic for ourselves. We invested in a blockchain infrastructure company called Securrency, which we ended up selling to DTCC. But that was an unusually aggressive sort of bet my career and my team's career on doing this in a small public company. But they had a vision for compliance-aware tokens, that means programmable value. Right? So it's not just the underlying asset that's important, but the technology that wraps it. So the tokenization, a digital wrapper, has functionality that can potentially be much greater than the ETF. So once we sort of saw that, we went sort of all in on this, and it served us well.
Awesome. Yeah, I think actually Nadine, I don't know if she's in the audience right now, but she's definitely here. So, lots of friends in the audience, and I remember that investment. I remember DTCC taking it over, really almost as a hallmark of, okay, now people are getting a lot more serious about these things in traditional finance. But, as much as people are starting to take the technology a lot more seriously, when you look at the total value in real-world assets on chain, it's still a drop in the bucket compared to the total AUM of asset managers. I mean, even yourself, you guys are at 150, $60 billion. I mean, that's bigger than all of the tokenized assets combined in a way. So part, I think, of that reason has been that the tokenization efforts so far really have focused slightly more on retail. I mean, that's at least where Ondo has focused also with their tokenized stocks and ETFs. Should players be focusing a little bit more on institutional adoption? And if so, what would it actually take to get to that $100 billion number?
So what I loved about ETFs was it gave both retail and institutional a level playing field. If it's either better or not better. If it's better, then it's going to bring both institutional and retail in. So that's just the bottom line. Now, the thing about retail is they make their own decisions. They can go quicker. So for WisdomTree, This is about serving the on-chain community. And because of the performance of crypto, notwithstanding the last couple of months, but crypto, the best performing Bitcoin asset class for the last 15 years, it's a couple of $1 trillion. So you're going after a large market, a lot of retail. And for WisdomTree, our vision was, one, the platform, DLT or blockchain, is better, could be global. But the crypto investor, they didn't have any access to banking or any other services. In fact, over the last administration, they were really shunned and put in a corner, and they also didn't have any other assets that they could invest in. Now, the crypto community themselves, they're full-on believers, so they don't really diversify much. So we're in the very, very early stages. I would say they're not interested in everything. They're interested right now in yield to offset their crypto speculation and investing. That's really where it is today, but over time it'll be more than that.
Our firms have had the pleasure of working together on OUSG and the WisdomTree Tokenized Treasury Fund, and I think it's a good example of how crypto native players can partner up with legacy asset managers that are really forward-leaning. How do you think about that distribution to that crypto native audience? You mentioned, this is about retail. We really want to make these products better. How do you think about distribution, and beyond distribution, how else do you think you can partner with the crypto ecosystem and with companies like Ondo?
It'll be a number of things. I mean, you could do marketing, traditional marketing. It's a lot of business development. We had to start with something called WisdomTree Prime because there was no place to place tokenized securities. So we had to create something so that we could house our own assets. WisdomTree Connect is allowing us to take our assets and letting them travel to institutions or to self-hosted wallets. So, that's real, in our opinion, responsible DeFi. I think for WisdomTree also, one of the other things that we got very, very early from Securrency was the need for interoperability. So we didn't want to build our own chain. We just wanted to have the best exposures that could be on all chains. You just mentioned Solana, that we have, I think that's our 8th chain, and I'm sure there will be more over time. And as long as you have a value proposition that they want and what you want to work with them, I mean, you'll find the way to do it. I mean, you're using our products, and not because you like me.
I do like you, but
he doesn't really mean it. So it's the product that is why we've come together.
100%. No, your products have been great. Don't get me wrong. What does success look like for WisdomTree in the digital asset space in 2026 and 2027?
I keep my job. That would be great. We want to continue to scale. So last year we went from like 30 million in assets to about 750 million in assets. We want to get to, obviously, right now we're still not making money on our digital asset efforts, but we're in line of sight of taking this to a profitable business. It doesn't take that much scale. And I imagine that, so we just want to continue to scale what we're doing. And, when I think about my journey in ETFs, I was not late. I launched in June of 2006, but I was 13 years behind the Spider and 7 years behind iShares. For WisdomTree, it was important that we were actually first through the regulatory door. We wanted to be first, and we accomplished that, really. I think you are, like you said, others are experimenting. We're founder-led, we're entrepreneurial. In these big institutions, it can be very, very hard to align the different fiefdoms within an organization, but we are completely aligned on doing this. One thing that we recently got from the SEC was the ability to trade and settle our money market fund 24/7. So that's a true innovation where you have a real world asset or a real world fund that is exhibiting the characteristics of crypto. So it's a tremendous accomplishment, many, many years in front of the SEC.
No, I agree. And congratulations on all the growth that you mentioned that you guys had with the tokenized treasury fund, enabling it as collateral. I feel like we're probably starting to enter a point, we talked about this, Ondo did it a little bit in their keynote, where there are enough tokenized assets almost available on chain. What's next is really what can you do with them, right? And what are the services that you can build on top of those things? Is there anything from WisdomTree that we should expect in the next, call it 12 to 24 months on that front?
We're tied to the banking rails. We have a stable coin. We have gold. We have funds. We have model portfolios. We are offering a lot. For us, we actually have to attract more customers. That's really the number one thing. But really, this is bigger than asset management. This is really about financial services. Financial services, some of these banks go back a couple of centuries. So they built on legacy, on top of legacy, on top of legacy. There is that modernization that has to happen. And when it does happen, then you'll really see all consumers would prefer to stay on chain. They'll have better experiences in general, whether it's getting interest on a second-by-second basis or things like that. These are the trends that are happening. Better, faster, cheaper.
Could not have said it better myself. Jono, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a wrap.
Thank you.